pictures.
There we go.
Thank you. Oh, good. So we have our Jamal's here now. So these are the folks that are going to be presenting. This is the picture I was referring to. Before I turn it over to Jamal to welcome folks, I just have one more housekeeping item, and that is we did a series of webinars in August, and if you go to our website, nchcw.org, you can pull down that content. So we're going to get through what we can today, and then we're going to, we have 3 more webinars over the next 30 days or so. They're every Thursday at 1 o'clock. So we're going to get through as much content as we can today, but do tune in every Thursday for the next few weeks to dive in to more content. So today's really about a bird's eye view. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jamal Callahan for welcome and introduction.
So yes, thank you, and sorry for my tardiness. A lot going on here in the beautiful Buckeye State. So I do want to thank everybody for joining us today. I see we have a lot of participants listening in on just wanting to get more knowledge about FUP and FYI as we know it today. And I want to thank again HUD and Ryan, who's been definitely meeting with us for the last 4 or 5 years, kind of helping us and teaching us and showing us the ropes as far as housing is concerned. And so I do want to thank you definitely for that. We also have, as Ruthie said, John Egan, who for the better part of my life has has been an expert. Listen, and I'm 40, so what does that tell you? No. Has basically knows the family unification program front to back. And so we're just so glad and excited that he's able to join us again. So John, thank you for being here. And then Adora Nora, who is a wonderful, wonderful young lady who has the opportunity to use and speak from experience when we talk about how FUP and the Family Self-Sufficiency Program is working. So, and then of course, you know, Chris Patterson. So we want to make sure who is the regional director over Region 9 of HUD, and again, the administrator over FYI. So we're just excited that we have the backing of Secretary Carson and HUD. So we want to make sure that all the information gets out, and we want to make sure that every housing authority understands how to do this right, and also child welfare. So without the partnership between housing and child welfare, there's no way that FYI could be as effective as it is. So without any further ado, I don't want to belabor this any longer, but I want to make sure that the information does get out. So I'll turn this back over to Ruthie and Adora to kind of give the overview.
Okay, thank you. And whenever Chris Patterson jumps on, we'll have him give his, if you guys haven't met Chris Patterson, be prepared to be dazzled. But we're going to carry on and go through some of the content. So we thought it was important that folks had a sense of how the Family Unification Program and FYI fit together. Okay, so this timeline is designed to help you understand how FYI came into being. Some of you may know that the Family Unification Program is a 30-year-old program. It was added into the Cranston-Gonzalez Affordable Housing Act in 1990. Interestingly enough, so was the Family Self-Sufficiency Program. So HUD has had these tools at its disposal for a very long time, and we were happy to use that as a platform to kind of even create some more improvements. So it existed for a long time. When it was created in 1990, it was created as a part of something called the Tenant Protection Account. The Tenant Protection Account is worthy of further study. I won't go into too much detail on it, but just suffice it to say, it's a very flexible account, and vouchers can be issued on demand. In any event, that is how FUP was funded initially. In 2000, the Youth Advisory Committee approached myself and my co-founder, actually, Bob McKay, and said, we've heard about these vouchers for families, but are you aware that youth are aging out into homelessness as well? And I will be the first to admit that, no, I was not aware that that was going on. I was appalled that I wasn't aware. So with their direction, we took that request to Congress, and youth were added as an eligible population. Sadly, in 2001, HUD ceased its use of tenant protection vouchers to fund the family unification program, so it essentially went dormant for several years. So we made inroads with Congress and making them aware that the secretaries, not just one, but several, were not using their discretion to fund the program out of the tenant protection account. And so we suggested that they direct the HUD secretary to do that. And instead, Senator Murray and Bond set up a separate account for FUP. And also at that same time, they created the current version of Veterans Affairs Supportive Housing Program, which is modeled after the Family Unification Program. And that's why you see in 2008, the funding essentially reemerges. And when you look at HUD's materials, you'll see sort of a divider line there, pre-2008 and then post-2008. So in 2016, Representative Lukemeyer introduced legislation to extend youth vouchers from what they were, which was 18 months, up to 3 years. So that's a 36-month voucher now. But Senator Murray did something very interesting as well, and Dora's going to talk a little bit about that. She created a family unification FSS demo. And if young people enroll in that program, they can extend their voucher to a total of 5 years, and Adora could talk about that and how that's used as a platform for self-sufficiency. Oops. And then in 2019, taking all of this information together, our organization, Action Ohio, and a group of foster youth went to the secretary, and actually we did work very closely with PIH and the Public Housing Authority Directors Association, Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, to create a proposal arguing that because youth are eligible for the Family Unification Program, and because it's an eligible use of HUD's tenant protection account, HUD could issue vouchers on demand that were perfectly timed with the young person's emancipation. And so that proposal, of course, within 4 months of learning of it, Secretary Carson and his team, Ryan Jones essentially wrote that notice that you have about FYI. They created it within 4 months, and it is live, and we're going to hopefully explain to you some basic ideas about how to access the program. But I think it's important that Adora have an opportunity to tell her amazing story, but which just, she's an inspiration to everyone that hears her talk, but it's also an important indication of why it was necessary to create something like foster youth independence that improves the synchronization of vouchers and emancipation from foster care. So let me turn it over to Adora.
Hello, everyone. I will be going over a little bit of what FUP and FSS have done for me and how I've kind of viewed it, maneuvering through it these past few years. I started off in FUP, and how that came about was a pretty eventful story. I started out about a year into my emancipation. Things were getting kind of unsettling, being as though it's time to start making plans for life after foster care. It's a real thing, guys. It really is. And it came quickly, actually, more quick than I thought it was going to. We started talking about it about a year out. Next thing you know, 6 months was here, and we're trying to figure out what I'm going to be doing after foster care and emancipation. I happened to go to a college fair one day and met a young lady that coincidentally was in the same foster care program. and we were talking, and we realized that we were in the same program, and she was telling me that she was aging out in about a month or so. And I was like, okay, so what are you doing? What's going on for you after emancipation? And she actually told me that there was a program called FUP that she had been recommended for, and that it was a voucher where she was able to get assistance with her rent, but it was kind of helping her get that push in order to be able to secure an apartment on her own, easier than it would take a regular 20 or 21-year-old to secure an apartment. So I was a little surprised because I hadn't heard about that, and I'd been asking questions to my social worker about what is, possible for me after emancipation. And so I called her up and kind of questioned her on it. I told her about the program and pretty much that I knew all about it, and, where's my spot? And so we kind of talked about it. So we held the FEM, and I asked for all of the supervisors that were needed to approve something like this, if they could be present, and which they happily obliged. And we went through everything, and because I knew about it, they couldn't really, push it off, which was not really how it was done before, but I just wasn't given as much information as I probably would have liked to know at that time. So, yeah, we talked about it, and I was told that at that moment that it was pretty much closed off because it depends on how the government disperses funds and things of that nature. And that was probably about 3 months towards my emancipation. And a month before my emancipation, I got a call saying that they had just opened the portal up, and that it was a very short timeline that they had. So if I had time to really just get over there and fill out the application so that they can send it in. And I literally got there about 30 to 45 minutes later, did the application, and the girl that tried to do it after me, she got pushed out of the system because it had already closed, and I got there like within that inch of a few minutes. So it was pretty much a whirlwind. But at that point, I was happy because I secured the voucher, and I started doing what I was supposed to do, which was basically working, and I had a job, and so it was all good. I was doing what I was used to doing. And then I got recommended by my old social worker for foster care for the FSS program, which was basically like an extension and an addition to FUP. And it helped in a way that instead of having 3 years on the voucher, you would have 5 years on the voucher. And it was also a pilot program that helped you to attain self-sufficiency by the time that you were 25 or 26, I believe. And they also had incentives as far as like escrow accounts, whereas if your income raises, like you're working more and you're paying more percentage of your rent, that they would actually match you dollar for dollar in your increases and put it aside in an account, so that when you actually matriculate from the FSS program, they have a check waiting for you to help you with anything that you need to get done as far as home ownership, which is actually what I'm on target to doing next year, because I have 2 more years in the, well, actually, yes. So in June, that will basically have worn out my stay for the FUP program. So now I'm riding on my last 2 years from the FSS program. So by next year, I'll be on target to home ownership, which I'm very excited about. And that's only been able to happen because of these amazing and wonderful programs that have been put in place. Unfortunately, the uncertainty of these programs is what kind of scares the youth, because something like this would change their lives, and not being able to attain it at a time that they needed because of not knowing whether policies are going to go through or funds are going to be dispersed, or that they're not on hand or on demand. It really puts a little tense of a nature on the topic, if I would say it like that. So with that being said, that's why FYI is here, because it pretty much takes out the uncertainty of everything, and it allows these vouchers to be on demand, which is really what these youth need. I would love to see more of my foster youth brothers and sisters being able to emancipate like I have, and being able to live life as I have. I'm on track with school. I'm currently doing a double major in criminal justice and communications, and I don't think that if I didn't have the safe haven of having my own place and being able to focus on studies and things like that, and not having to worry about working 5 jobs as I've done before, believe me, working 5 jobs and not being able to study and get good grades in school, so that I can be able to advance myself in life when life after this program happens. So with that being said, I would like to turn it over back to Miss Ruthie, and thank you for hearing me out.
Yay. Funny thing is, though, you still have 3 jobs. So
She does.
I
She
do.
does.
That's the crazy thing.
one of them is for us, but yeah, it's not lost on anybody how industrious Miss Adora is, and we're so lucky to have her. But it is true that her story is quite the near miss. And the idea that another young woman made it to the housing authority, but the window had closed within minutes of her getting there, and therefore she didn't get the voucher, is catastrophic. For that young woman. So thank you for that. And actually, Adora did offer some suggestions, and she mentioned a family involved, a FEM, and in Maryland, that's the name that Maryland gives these transition planning meetings. So we just want to make sure that child welfare staff are aware of FYI and kind of included in the portfolio of options. That when you work in partnership with your public housing authority, magical things can happen. And FYI, just it really matters, because the predictability that it creates. Many young people who advocated for the program are over income for Section 8. They're out of school, they're over income. They have other plans, but for the young people that need it, it's important that they know that it's there. So before I hand it over to Ryan, I'm going to just very quickly explain the difference between FUP and FYI. Really the difference is the distribution mechanism is very agile for the family, for FYI. So I will not belabor this chart. I'll explain the asterisk. Ryan may get into this as well, but the eligibility for youth for the Family Unification Program and FYI is 18 to age 26. Any young person who's been in foster care after the age of 16, who is between these 2 ages, is eligible. But hats off to HUD. They interpret age as giving you an entire extra year of eligibility. So in HUD's world, 25 actually means your 26th birthday. But actually, it's been extended. The statutory language around this is age 18 to 24. But if you look over at this asterisk over here, HUD has issued a number of waivers. In fact, I think the actual document is called mega waivers, which sounds like an Avengers character, but they issued these right off the bat when COVID-19 hit. They issued an opportunity for waivers, but one of the ones that came out, I believe April 1st, says that they have further extended eligibility through a young person's 25th year to their 26th birthday. So I'd like you to have this chart. I won't say too much more about this chart, except to say that, the importance of the Family Unification Program for families cannot be overstated. About 30% of families who are in foster care are there because they do not have access to safe, decent, affordable housing. That amounts to somewhere around 100,000 kids. So we want to always make sure that FUP and FUP for families, FUP for youth always kind of coexist. But FUP for families was first, then FUP for youth came about, and then with these great stories from young people like and ideas from young people like Adora, FYI was created. This is a chart I just wanted to offer that shows the distribution mechanism for the Foster Youth Independence Program and how expedient it is. And Adora mentioned that her independent living coordinator at her foster youth meetings was sort of equivocating about whether or not FUP existed. It's because they don't know if there's going to be a voucher available. So for the housing authorities that are able to be a part of the FYI program, it makes the lives of the social workers out there in the child welfare world much easier because they can have a more planful conversation with you. So I'm really grateful for this program because it honors the work that social workers are really trying to do. And then the only other thing I want to say about this chart is young people were very passionate about bringing new resources into housing authorities. Okay, so if you see this waiting list icon here, the vouchers it's new money that comes into a housing authority, is used, and then it essentially, as Ryan would say, sunsets or dissipates or goes back to HUD, however you want to look at it. So we don't further disadvantage the waiting list families. I think it's important as you're marketing this or talking to your housing authority partners about it to help them understand that we're not doing this at the disadvantage of the housing authority waiting list. And we do advocate, my organization does advocate to bring in more money generally for housing authorities. So that's kind of how it works. But I want to hand it over to Ryan to talk to you about how you apply for FYI. It's also the case that Ryan, I don't know how Ryan does all the things he does at HUD. He's also responsible for the fact that $24.4 million just went out for the Family Unification Program as well. So we are really, really grateful that we get some of his time today. And so I want to hand it over to Ryan.
Thank you, Ruthie. Hi, everyone. It's a real honor to be invited as a guest on today's webinar discussion of FUP and FYI. Again, my name is Ryan Jones. I am the Deputy Director of the Housing Voucher Management and Operations Division in HUD's Office of Public and Indian Housing. Our office is responsible for developing national policies, procedures, standards, methods, and administrative requirements for the Housing Choice Voucher Program. This includes overseeing programs like FUP and FYI. Today, I'll be talking about the application to or applying to administer FYI vouchers. As you recently heard, FYI differs in a number of significant ways from FUP. Most important to the discussion at hand is that FYI is not a competitive program, and so instead of orienting you to a specific NOFA, I'll orient you to a notice issued by the Office of Public and Indian Housing. Notice PIH 2019-20, link of which is included in this slide deck. The notice has 18 sections, but for today's purpose, I'm going to focus on the areas most important to those thinking about applying. Section 3 covers the availability of funding. What I'd like to lift up for you is that HUD is continuing to accept requests on a rolling basis. The current pandemic has not had an impact on our ability to process these requests and make awards. So we're still getting those requests and we're continuing to process those requests. Moving on to section 4, which talks about PHA eligibility. To request FYI assistance, a PHA must meet all of the eligibility requirements that are outlined in the notice A through F. This includes administering the Housing Choice Voucher Program, the HCV program, and not administering the Family Unification Program, partnering with a public child welfare agency, getting referrals of the youth from the child welfare agency, and determining program eligibility for the voucher program. The child welfare agency also has a role and responsibilities, which are outlined in section 5 of the notice. Most critically is the responsibility to identify eligible youth and certifying eligibility of the young person. This section also references the provision of supportive services. I want to flag that the supportive services do not have to just come from the child welfare agencies and can come from other community partners. Any youth to participate in FYI must be offered a suite of services. These are outlined in section 6 of the notice. These services should be available for 36 months that a youth receives assistance, but I want to note that participation in these services is voluntary for the young person. Youth eligibility is covered in section 7 of the notice. The youth eligible to be assisted under FYI is the same as under FUP. That is, the young person has attained 18 years and not more than 24 years of age, left foster care or will leave foster care in accordance with the transition plan at age 16 or older, and is homeless or at risk of homelessness. The PHA and Child Welfare Agency must have a partnership agreement. The partnership agreement is in the form of a Memorandum of Understanding, or MOU, or Letter of Intent. And probably a third of the communities that we get an application from, the continuum of care is also a party to the local FYI effort. Moving on to the request itself, the trigger for eligibility is the receipt of a referral by the PHA from the Child Welfare Agency certifying to eligibility of a youth. This requirement is found in section 10 of the notice. The request to HUD can be for as few as 1 youth or up to the maximum award of 25 vouchers in a fiscal year, noting that HUD's fiscal year ends in September. We've seen all flavors of the above. We've had PHAs apply for 1 voucher and then come back and apply for more vouchers, having had success with that first voucher in youth, while some PHAs have submitted 25 referrals at the start. Application process is outlined in section 15 of the notice. Applications are submitted by email by the executive director of the PHA or equivalent to an email box at HUD, so that's FYI-TPV@HUD.gov. What is included in the email? There's 9 elements, starting with just basics, the PHA name and code, a statement from the PHA that they're requesting the assistance under the notice, confirmation that the PHA doesn't administer a FUP, the name of the Child Welfare Agency partner, the name of the partnering continuum of care, if there will be one, the name of the entities providing the supportive services, a certification statement that the PHAs have entered into partnership agreements with the Child Welfare Agency, and then, of course, the continuum of care is applicable, so the letter of support or the MOU. The number of vouchers being requested and the names, and we've clarified recently, is alternative identifiers for that young person to protect their information. If a request is missing something, this is one of the most common areas where the PHA has either forgot to identify the number of vouchers or named, or at least with an alternative identifier. I will point out that HUD does not require additional information about the young person in the request. For example, we don't need their social security or date of birth or those information. We don't need, we want to make sure that we're protecting that PII. Another issue we sometimes see is where the PHA is requesting vouchers before receiving a referral. As a reminder, the trigger for eligibility is a referral of the eligible youth. We also ask for contact information so that HUD can follow up. Attached to the email is a completed HUD form 52515. Since issuance of the notice, this form has been updated. As a result, only the first page of the form needs to be completed. The information requested is very basic, asking for PHA contact information and the number of vouchers being requested. Next slide, Ruthie, please. So I know that is a lot of material to cover in a short time. So I would like to point you to the great resources on HUD's FYI webpage. This includes a list of eligible PHAs, a summary of the notice, a sample memorandum of understanding, sample email requests, and responses to some frequently asked questions, among other material that is available. Back to the application process. Once HUD receives an application, an eligibility review is conducted to verify that all of the required information has been submitted and that the PHA is eligible to administer the FYI vouchers. The PHA will receive an eligibility determination from HUD. In that, HUD will let the PHA know that the request meets the requirement and that the request has been forwarded to our financial management division for processing. Or we let the PHA know if the request needs to be modified and resubmitted. Something to keep in mind in terms of timing is that from request to award, it can take up to 60 days depending on the timing of the request. Although requests are often processed much quicker, but just to know that there are times when the request, the timing to get that voucher, the funding to the PHA can be up to 60 days. And if you will advance the slide, please. So I'd like to pivot to HUD's recent announcement that Ruthie alluded to previously, is in that HUD awarded just over $24 million to some 44 PHAs across the country to administer an additional 1,900 vouchers for family unification and eligible youth. This was a very competitive allocation, and communities receiving the allocation should be really proud of their application. We look forward to seeing those vouchers becoming available to communities this year. I will note that HUD's 2020 appropriations included new money for FUP. So everyone should be on the lookout this summer for the next FUP NOFA. This one will be targeted to youth with at least $10 million being made available. And so Ruthie, I don't know, I see, I thought I saw, oh, there we go. I see Chris Patterson. So I don't know if you want me to hand it off to Chris or to John. I just want to check with you. I'm not going to hear you.
We can't hear you, Ruthie.
Sorry. Chris, do you have audio?
I do.
All
Hey,
right.
so, all right. Why don't we, thank you for that, Ryan. Why don't we hand it over to Chris, and then we can hand it back over to you to introduce John. Okay. Go for it.
Thanks, everybody. Obviously, my screen ID says Jamal Callahan, so we'll just laugh at that. We'll blame that technical difficulties on Ruthie. Again, thank you. I would like to say we'll blame it on Ryan, but it's not his fault. This is Ruth's problem. But thank you, though, for especially right now with the present situation and the coronavirus in the country. This is showing and showcasing and highlighting the situation that the youth across the country and the families across the country are establishing and facing with this particular situation. So the importance of FYI and FUP have become more prevalent now than ever before. And I know under Secretary Carson's leadership, Ryan Jones, Danielle Bastarash, Assistant Secretary Hunter Kurtz, and I could say lots of other names, but I think that everybody is, all hands on deck, and they're trying to make sure that we get things done in an appropriate manner to where we can help as many families as possible. And I can't say enough on how much the work that HUD and PAH and the people there are doing with the assistance of Ruthie and Adora and Jamal, and I would say 20 plus other former foster kids who really helped to meet with Secretary Carson on this initiative. So it's my honor to help amplify it, support it, and dig through the weeds with Ryan's help and Jamal's and Ruthie's and others to express the fact of the importance. I know that right now we're seeing more and more that with the college closures, the school campuses closures, the public schools closed, the safety nets for which the families, these kids need it's more crucial now than ever before. And we take this very serious. I know this is something that one of us are working nonstop on. I know that, so for me, and I know for Ryan as well, I won't speak for him, he can speak for himself, but I think that everybody takes this extremely serious. And I know that with the expansion of all the money that's coming out there, and every time we have a grant announcement or an award for more FYI vouchers or the nimbleism of FUP, I think this is something that we all are very proud of. And people are very tired, they're exhausted. They want to work hard to make sure people are taken care of and they're protected and they're safe. So I just want to say thank you for allowing me to participate. I think we're all realizing that we need to figure out how policies are working, where they're working, and how we can make them more effective. So thank you.
Thank you, Chris. I think you neglected to mention that you have a storied history.
I do. So I do. I oftentimes forget sometimes that for myself, I grew up in the foster care system, from birth on back and forth. So from birth to 5 years old, and then at 5 years old, I was adopted. Then back into care at age 12, and I aged out at age 19, 20 when I had graduated from high school. And from there, I went into the Job Corps and went into college and found my path as Jamal has, Adora has, and many other foster youth who have figured out what makes them happy. And that always doesn't mean going to college. Sometimes it means finding a vocational trade to where you can get more of a pathway to self-sufficiency and take care of your family and yourself more specifically. And spent 25 years working in the field in the private sector, working with health and human services for autistic, schizophrenia, bipolar, dual diagnosed, co-occurring disorders, sexually trafficked, and drug addicted youth. So to me, it's a very worthwhile endeavor we are all on together. And I've had the pleasure of meeting many, many foster kids, many professionals, many advocates, many stakeholders, and many HUD staff who carry the torch greatly to help foster youth. So for me, I can say this over and over again. Thank you. It is a blessing, and we are fortunate to have this initiative to help, up to 24,000. I see that number growing for vouchers. Ryan does and everybody else does. And I think that this is one of those, it's an unprecedented initiative, even though it is new. It's an unprecedented initiative that I think will take off more and more once people find out what we can do to help those kids who are aging out of the foster care system.
Well, I think it's an extraordinary coming together of circumstances that young people and parents would have designed these programs, and then we have someone with that history out there raising awareness about it. It's, the fact that Secretary Carson listened and created the program, but then assigned you the role of being the national lead on it. It's just divine intervention, perhaps. So we're very lucky to have you as a partner. So thank you for that. So with that, hand it over to Ryan to introduce John. But I also want to say, keep your questions coming through the chat box because, as I said, we are scheduled to 2:15, but I'd like to get some questions answered before, around 2-ish. Okay, so with that, let me hand it back over to Ryan.
Yeah, sure. So at this time, I would like to hand it over to John Egan, who I've had the pleasure to regularly communicate with on both FUP and FYI over the years. But we were saying before this started, this is the first time we've actually seen each other's face. So I apologize. You have to see what I actually look like. But John brings the extensive experience on the ground and experience with these programs, as you've heard from everyone else. In many cases, often educating me. So I just want to welcome John, and I look forward to hearing all that he has to share in terms of his expertise in administering this on the ground. Thanks, John.
Thank you very much, Ryan. And Chris and Ryan, thank you so much for the work that you guys put into this program. But then Ruth, I just want to make sure everyone understands this program was dormant for a long time. Ruthie really resuscitated it. She was the one that brought it back to life. And what it means to children and youth is just unimaginable. I often tell people that the worst thing that could possibly happen to a person is to lose the ability to care for their child. It seems to be one of the most fundamental rights we have, and that every child indeed deserves a home. And we need to make sure that we have the capacity in our country to make sure we're giving that opportunity to every family and then every youth. The slide before, and we don't need to go back, Ruthie, is one where it's a handbook that we created to help our youth who are aging out of care. It provides information on services, and also just basic information on landlord-tenant rights. It's one that I really would recommend that every child welfare agency in the country put together. Though I wouldn't recommend a handbook. We're actually trying to put a website together. You can look at a wonderful one, and I haven't haven't asked if I could share this, but I'm sure they don't mind. The state of California put know before you go. It's KNOW, then the letter B, the number 4, the letter U, and then GO. Google it. Know before you go. It's a wonderful website that helps youth who are aging out of care. We are putting one together in Illinois. I definitely recommend that for everybody. But anyway, sorry, Ruth, you can go to the next slide. So we were going to go over the next few sessions. Ruth is going to go over how to put together a successful FUP or FYI program. And so today we're just talking mostly about kind of a large overview about how you make a program work. I always tell Ruthie, I love this slide and I hate it at the same time because it looks really confusing. There's a lot of parts to it and I'm always afraid it's going to scare people from starting the program. But unfortunately, this is what we need to do. It's why we have the money to put together these opportunities because it's not easy. This is hard stuff, but it is definitely doable. And it all starts with the relationship that you have between the Child Welfare Agency and the Public Housing Authority. With FYI, that is required. With the Family Unification Program, you're also then are required to involve the continuum of care. However, for FYI, you are welcome to involve the continuum of care. In fact, I would encourage you to do that so that you can serve all the youth that could possibly be needing this assistance. But it does start with this MOU, or a letter of agreement between the Housing Authority and the Child Welfare Agency to kind of agree on who's doing what and how can we make sure this program is going to work best for each other. Right now we're going through that with all of our family unification programs that just got new awards for the family unification program vouchers, where we're reintroducing an MOU we put together for our referral application. If you are one of those new FUP funded programs, this is a time when the child welfare team and the housing authority team and the continuum of care need to get together. That's what we've been doing this past week, talking about what does our MOU say, because now it's serious. Now we need to put these, what we put on paper into action. Go over to make sure everyone understands what you wrote. When you say you're providing the service, who's going to provide it? How are they going to provide it? How are you guys going to make sure that you guys are both doing what you said you were going to do? For FYI, right now, if you haven't started a program, what you need to do is for the Child Welfare Agency to find out who's out there. I just asked for a list of all the youth that are 20 and over in the state of Illinois because probably their case is going to close in the next 12 months. And these are then the youth that we're going to be looking at to serve through the Fostering Youth to Independence Initiative. You heard Adora say earlier that some youth had to tell her about this program. And that happens in Illinois too, I'm sure, but that's not how it's supposed to happen. The Child Welfare Agency should be the one that's identifying this so that Adora doesn't have to find this out on her own. So somebody in the Child Welfare Agency needs to be the point that's going to look through the list, start talking to the caseworkers and say, did you know that this program is out there? And then go to the Housing Authority. I think the next slide might be the best one now, Ruthie, because one of the things the Child Welfare Agency needs to start doing is develop this relationship with the Housing Authority. The Housing Authority gets funded for this program, but this is the Child Welfare's program. If you're going to be a successful FUP, or if you're going to be a successful Fostering Youth Initiative, it means that you're going to have a successful Child Welfare Agency or a continuum of care that's going to provide the services that are necessary to make this program work. So meet with your Housing Authority, take them to lunch, tell them what you can provide. They're going to be interested if you can provide services to help this youth or to help this family be successful. For FYI, these services are for 36 months. As Ryan said, it's not required that the youth participate in them, but it is required that the Child Welfare Agency or somebody in this program offer those services for 36 months. So let them know what you can do. Make sure you have a person that's going to be in charge of this, that's going to know who's being referred, and keep track of who's being referred. Make sure that you're communicating with them regularly. At least, I think this is in the FUP, no FUP, that you're talking to them at least quarterly. But for some housing authorities, it might be more. You might be trying to at least meet with them over the phone or through emails every month to try to make sure you know what's happening with the clients that you're serving. Ruthie said that this program went dormant for a long time, for a number of years between 2001 and 2008. It then went dormant again between 2011 until I think it was 2019. But at Chicago, with the Chicago Housing Authority, we never stopped referring clients because we tracked all of them to make sure that as a FUP family or a FUP youth left the program, another one was taking its place. I'll talk about that in a few seconds. You then want to make sure that the Housing Authority, the Continuum of Care, and the Child Welfare Agency all know how each of your programs operate. What we've done in Illinois is provide cross trainings where we have housing people and shelter people and child welfare people all come together so that you can hear about what the other system is doing, how to process applications, referrals, obtain services. And I'll tell you that if we're going to be a successful program, what I tell the Housing Authority I'm asking them to do is to just run their program. Run their housing choice voucher program the way they normally would. Make sure you're paying your landlords on time. Go through my referrals as quickly as possible. Make sure that you're being respectful to our clients, and if there's any way you can forgive a criminal background, make sure that you do that. But just run your program the way you normally would. The Child Welfare Agency needs to be the agency then that's going to be providing the services. The only other thing I would say that Adora mentioned, and that is that if you have a family self-sufficiency program, it is unbelievably helpful to our families and especially to our youth. Why don't you go to the next slide, Ruthie? So the referral process becomes very important. I think we'll probably be talking about this in greater detail in the future. But the Child Welfare League of America, Ruthie, the National Center for Housing and Child Welfare has this referral form on their website. So if you're interested in taking it, you're welcome to take it and do whatever you want with this. This is the one that we use in the state of Illinois. Some important things that it has a place for the client to sign, because you are giving some very confidential information to the housing authority. So make sure that the youth or the family understands this information that you're going to be providing to the housing authority. Make sure that it has the youth or family's contact information. It should include eligibility criteria so that the caseworker can explain why this family or why this youth meets the eligibility criteria for the program. It should have a place that the liaison to the program certifies that the youth or the family meets the eligibility criteria. And so the one that Ruth has on her website has all of these things. Like I said, if you're definitely welcome to plagiarize it as much as you want. And Ruth, why don't you go to the next slide? I just talked earlier about how we kept up with the Chicago Housing Authority, even in the dormant years. We've never lost a voucher in the city of Chicago because we kept this spreadsheet. And so I recommend that you guys make sure you keep a spreadsheet and that you meet regularly with your housing authorities. We'll talk more about these meetings probably at future webinars, but keep something like this so that you know who's on the program, who's off the program, and once that person is off the program, you just make another referral. Before I close, I wanted to say that there is a question that came up in the chat. What should you use, FUP or FYI? Just really quick, I believe it's still the case that if you have FUP, if you're in an area that has the Family Unification Program, that housing authority cannot apply for FYI. So FYI is for the housing authorities that do not have a family unification program. But it's still a very interesting question because a FUP could serve a family or could serve a youth. The advantage of serving a family for many of them is that there's no timeline on the program. It's not that they're going to be kicked off in 3 years. So there is some advantages to be served as a family, but you might not have that choice. For families, they need to be involved in the child welfare system. Many youth are leaving our child welfare system. They might not be part of that, but they still are eligible to then be referred as a youth if they are aging out or have aged out of the foster care system. The fact that they have a child does not in any way change their eligibility for either an FYI voucher or family unification program voucher. But if their cases, if they don't have an open DCFS case or a child welfare case, then it becomes hard to make a referral since they don't have children who are in danger of being placed in care due to their inadequate housing. As Ruthie said, we're welcome any other questions that you guys had with this program. This is by far my favorite part of my job. I've been doing this for almost 25 years now, and FUP has been a part of that for all 25 years.
Thank you, John. And I see that Chris Patterson figured out how to use the link that I So a few questions have come in. I've been answering them as they come in. But John, since you mentioned services, there's a question about ongoing services for a young person out of foster care. How do you hook that up? And then also, I'm curious how you get child welfare dollars to serve families, because the recommendation is that they are served post-placement in housing for up to a year. So how do you pay for that?
So, and I'm sure we'll be talking about that more in future webinars. So make sure you sign up for the next 3 as well. But just a real quick thing for youth, it is Chafee. And I'm sure there's other things you can do. But Chafee becomes so important because it allows you to serve youth even after their case closes. And I'll tell you, as soon as the Administration of Child, Youth and Families, that's the federal HUD, allowed child welfare agencies to apply to use their Chafee funds until the youth turns 23, the state of Illinois ran and got that waiver immediately. And I recommend that everybody do the same. Unfortunately, and I'm sure Ruth will talk about this not today, in the future, that does not mean that your state will get more money. It allows them to serve youth for a longer period of time, but they don't get any additional dollars to do this. But this is your opportunity to use a very limited source of funding, but to expand it by attaching a housing choice voucher to the services. So if you have a youth that you start serving at 20.5, you're working with them to find housing. They might still be in your care. They then leave your care. You need that additional funding source. Even though your case is closed, Chafee can allow that. It can go all the way up until they're 23. So it's possible to get those 3 years of services. Sometimes you'll have a youth who might be 24, and then you're going to be going out to your community and saying, I can do services up until this age, but I need somebody else to do the last 6 months or the last 9 months or the last 12 months. Who else is out there? And you look for some of the people that are receiving some of your state's emergency solution grants or other funds to help this youth after they turn 23. For the youth that only go up to 21, if your state only goes up to 21 for Chafee, that's going to make it harder. So I would definitely encourage you to talk to your state about asking for the waiver to go to 23. For families, you're going to be using your prevention dollars. So you don't need to provide services for 3 years like you do with FYI. For families, you'll have to ask what your housing authority said when they applied. When the state of Illinois applied, we sought the maximum amount of points. I think we shot for the full 100 points when we put our applications together. And so we said we were going to serve them for 1 year after they get the voucher. So it's a shorter window. We do that through prevention dollars that are matched through the federal government. So it's a combination of state money and federal money. Again, if you are putting in, services to these families so that they can get their child back, you add the voucher that the housing authority pays. It doesn't cost anything to the child welfare agency. It's a housing authority program. Imagine how much money you save by not having that child in foster care. Children in foster care easily cost $1,000 a month, easy, probably even more. If you just add that up per child, then added by 12 months, you're talking about $20,000, $30,000 per year. The services you'll pay for to make sure that family is stable is going to be much, much, much less than having that kid in care.
So that cost benefit analysis is actually available on our website. I think it might be on the homepage, but in any event, if you just do a search, you can find that. We did a cost study, and HUD actually quotes it in their April 1st release, and it's staggering. I mean, an investment of $20 million in the family unification program saves like $134 million on the child welfare side of the ledger. However, child welfare is not completely off the hook because, as John points out, you do want some supportive services available to families to make sure that they age in place and they get comfortable in their neighborhood and they maintain and sustain their housing. But we figure that into the cost benefit analysis, so it's not a direct transfer on the balance sheet. But I'm really glad that you mentioned that because that's also helpful to make the case for youth as well. I mean, if you look at the cost of a juvenile justice placement or a residential treatment facility, which we do have a young man who's, because he otherwise would be homeless, is in a very expensive residential treatment facility, and he's about to get an FYI voucher in Northwest Ohio. Also, he's lovely and I adore him. But it's a tenth of the cost. If you look at how much residential treatment facilities cost versus a young person in their own apartment. So thank you for acknowledging that, John. And thank you, HUD, for including that in the press release. So with that, we're a little bit over time. I had some questions about whether or not this webinar is going to be recorded and available. It is recorded, and it's going to be on our website, but also get a copy of it in your follow-up email. If you look at the handouts, we have a number of things there, but a PDF of this PowerPoint presentation is available in there as well. People have asked for everyone's contact information because you're a bunch of rock stars. So I'm assuming everyone's comfortable with that. I mean, Ryan Jones, you can't go to the HUD website or any HUD notice and not see his name on it. So I'm sure you don't mind if I offer your, there's no escape, Ryan. And Jamal, catch him on Twitter, Facebook, and everything else.
There was a question that came through from Ryan.
Okay.
Ryan, real quickly, is FSS available at every housing authority?
I do not believe so. They would have to, the PHA would have to have applied and received funding.
Okay.
Is that the note you want to end on, Jamal? I don't think so. Okay, quick note on FSS. I feel that the Family Self-Sufficiency Program is HUD's best kept secret. And in fact, when Barbara Sard wrote about that several years ago at the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, that report, the title is FSS, HUD's best kept secret. Here's the reality. You can do an FSS-like program anywhere. So it really involves rewarding people for improving their incomes. Child welfare, we've encouraged child welfare over the years to begin doing that with supervised independent living money and stipends. So there are child welfare agencies doing that, and they're creating a nest egg for youth. But we could also do that for families. I think FSS creates a blueprint for us to do these things in other programs. And then one other final note on that, John, we asked John to talk about services and how to pay for them. Two things there. One is you actually don't have to ask for a waiver or any permission from the Children's Bureau to provide Chafee to 23. It's a matter of doing it and then reporting it in your June 30th report to the Children's Bureau. So your Child and Family Services Plan doesn't even have to say you're going to do that. You can start doing it now, certainly under this COVID situation we have going on. It's very flexible. Use it and then report that that's what you did with the money in your June 30th CFSP report. But the other thing, since Jamal mentioned FSS, got a question about it. A really important service provider here hasn't come up yet, and it's the Workforce Innovations and Opportunities Act providers out in the community. So we have a young woman in a county in Maryland, and child welfare was like struggling to figure out how they were going to provide services to her or find an entity to do that, because she's a very rural part of the state and she's 22 years old. But it turns out she already has a fully functioning case management contract with the workforce agency that's funded through WIOA in that rural part of Maryland. She's got a great case manager. I'm on a first name basis with her case manager at this point. And she also has a job. So it's a matter of just getting that workforce investment agency to sign the letter of agreement along with the child welfare DSS director for that county. And we did make it happen. There's a copy of an example of that letter of agreement on our website as well, but I could also send that with our follow-up information. So there's any number of ways to skin a cat here. Sorry to animal rights activists on the line. Any number of ways to get this stuff done. And what we really want to do is be a resource for you so you feel that you can move forward, because any time that we spend trying to figure this out is time that youth and families aren't getting served. So we want to be a resource for you. So I think on that note, we're about, we're at 2:08, but I wanted to let Jamal take us out. So let me hand it over to him and just say thank you. So Jamal.
No, yes. So thank you, everyone. It looks like we had close to 90 people on the line listening for information. We want to thank you for taking time out to hang out with us, get information. Thank you to our panelists, Ryan Jones, Adora Nora, myself, Ruthie White, John Egan, and Chris Patterson. We're just thankful that all of these heads have been in the trenches working together to make sure that not only FUP gets its recognition and its utilization, but also to bring light to FYI as it continues to house young people leaving foster care. I keep getting emails and phone calls a lot about is this available and how do we do this? And just know that I think up until this point, we've housed a lot of young people using the FYI voucher, and we're going to continue to push the envelope to make sure that partnerships between housing and child welfare become viable and they're working, because we don't want to see any young people on the street. So just call this a drop in the bucket of what we're doing to make sure that we're ending youth homelessness. And tune in next week. The same time. We'll have more information for you. If you didn't get a chance, I know this is recorded, so we'll be posting this on the National Center for Housing and Child Welfare's website. And if you have questions, feel free to email us, call us, shoot us a instant message through any social media site. We are here to answer your questions to make sure that every youth has a chance to receive a voucher. So thank you.
Okay, on that note, thanks everybody, and we'll see you back here next week. Bye. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.